In the middle of the night, my husband suddenly told me to go to the hospital. He asked me to operate on his friend Victoria. When I arrived, I saw Victoria lying pale on the hospital bed. The diagnosis at the end of the bed said uremia. She urgently needed a kidney transplant. I told her. Her condition was already in the terminal stage. If a suitable kidney source could not be found, the operation could not be performed. My husband misunderstood me as being jealous. He slapped me, angrily saying, "Are you still a doctor? Are you going to let her die? Just prescribe some medicine." I nodded and said, "I've got it. Your kidney matches hers. You donate it." As soon as I finished speaking, my husband's face changed. He frowned and said, "It's this late. You're joking." I said coldly, "Nathaniel, donor kidneys are so scarce. Don't you know that?" Nathaniel's eyebrows shot up. His tone was full of obvious anger. "If it wasn't tense, would I still need to come to you? You are my wife. You won't even help with this little favor." I couldn't help but laugh. My gaze stopped on their clasped hands. "So you do remember that I am your wife." "Oops. Nathaniel, don't be angry. Hurry and apologize to Dr. Alexander." Victoria spoke. She wore a fake smile on her face and held Nathaniel's hand tightly. "Dr. Alexander, don't get me wrong. Nathaniel and I are not having an affair. He's just concerned about my condition." I suppressed the urge to hit her and said with a cold face, "I don't get anything wrong. Now the only thing I can do to help is to arrange dialysis for you immediately." Nathaniel waved his hand and asked the nurse to take Victoria for blood tests and other examinations, but he didn't follow her. Instead, he stopped me from leaving. He said with suppressed anger, "Dr. Alexander, you have to embarrass me. Am I the one who is embarrassing you, or are you the one who is embarrassing me? Why did you send her to my hospital instead of the specialist hospital in the south of the city? Are you trying to make a fool of me?" As soon as he mentioned this, I couldn't help getting angry. Our hospital is indeed a top-tier hospital. I am the attending physician in the nephrology department. I am also quite well known in the industry. However, less than 20 kilometers from our hospital is Central Hospital. It ranks third in the country in terms of kidney disease treatment. Their equipment and professional level is incomparable to our hospital. Why do they have to be sent to me and make out in front of me? Don't I care about my dignity? What are you messing with? Who's laughing at you? She's just an old classmate of mine. Nathaniel was clearly about to lose his temper, but for some reason, he still managed to hold back his anger. He forced a smile and said, "Dr. Alexander, let's forget about our misunderstanding for now. There is an urgent matter. I need to ask you first. What do you want to know? What is your blood type?" Nathaniel stared at my face without blinking, facing his scrutinizing gaze. I felt a chill rising from the bottom of my heart, quickly spreading throughout my body. I understand. The Central Hospital has a higher priority for kidney allocation, but Nathaniel sent Victoria to the hospital where I was. It turns out that he was after my kidney. He wanted me to give him my kidney in exchange for the person who is most important to him. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was weighed down by a huge stone. Nathaniel must have taken Victoria to the Central Hospital, but they couldn't find a suitable kidney donor. That was inevitable, because the first step in a kidney transplant is a blood type match. Victoria is type O. Type O is the most common blood type. It accounts for 47% of the population. It is known as universal blood, because people with type A, B, or AB blood can receive type O blood. There is no rejection. However, people with type O blood as recipients are in a different situation. They can only receive blood of the same type. The same applies to organ transplants. This means that O blood patients have the lowest chance of finding a suitable kidney donor when they need a kidney transplant. The probability is only 47%. This is the same as the proportion of O blood in the population. In contrast, patients with other blood types have a probability of at least 70%, and for patients with AB blood, the probability is as high as 100%. Since kidneys themselves are very scarce, and the matching process is complicated, Victoria's blood type first ruled out 53 potential donors, so her chances of a successful match were almost zero. Victoria wanted a kidney transplant. There was only one way to go. That was to specify a donor. A healthy person with the same blood type O was needed, someone who would voluntarily donate a kidney to her. That's why Nathaniel came to me. I'm blood type O. I took a deep breath and stared at Nathaniel. Lying was useless. Nathaniel asked. He must have already known my blood type. After all, we'd been married for 5 years. But exactly because we have been married for 5 years, Even if I had an inkling of what he was going to say, I still wanted to hear it from him. Nathaniel, can you really say that? Nathaniel was a skilled speaker. He said it in a casual way. How about you donate one to her? I felt a chill run down my spine. I stared at him in disbelief. Nathaniel looked at me with a determined gaze. You have 2 kidneys anyway. Donating one to save her life, it's not that much to ask. Something in my throat felt like it was stuck. It took a lot of effort to squeeze out a word. Nathaniel, are you crazy? Crazy? What crazy? Nathaniel said seriously. You're a doctor. Isn't it your duty to heal and save lives? And don't doctors always say, can you live normally with only 1 kidney? What? Is this just a line to get people to donate? When it comes to your own kind, it just doesn't work. I looked at him sadly. This person who was supposed to care for and love me was always calculating how to take one of my kidneys. That's right. As long as you eat well, maintain a regular routine, exercise regularly, and have regular checkups, 1 kidney is enough to maintain a normal life. More than 1 million people in the country are born with only 1 kidney. That's about 1 in every 200 people. Many people never know they have only 1 kidney for their whole life. But why should I donate a kidney to a third party? My colleagues at the hospital look at me strangely. They often gather together and whisper when they see me approaching. They exchange meaningful glances. Occasionally, I can hear bits and pieces of conversation. It's full of all kinds of speculation. Something happened to Dr. Alexander's husband. He's having an affair. It's not uncommon to have an affair. But you brought the mistress to our hospital and flaunting their love in public. This is really not good. I heard that Dr. Alexander is not treating her husband very well. You see, they have been married for 7 years, and they don't have any children. Dr. Alexander is very busy at work. She is only 28 years old. It is normal that she doesn't want to have children. However, Dr. Alexander actually likes children very much. I heard that she wants to have children, but she can't get pregnant. Really? What are the reasons? Alas, women who are infertile usually have one of those common reasons. They were born with bad conditions, and they don't take care of themselves. Amidst the strange stares and sighs of realization, I walked towards Victoria's room. The moment I opened the door, I saw Victoria snuggled in Nathaniel's arms. The 2 of them were very close. It was as if no one was around. Victoria now has to undergo dialysis twice a week. Her complexion is much worse than before. Her body is also a bit swollen. Nathaniel is feeding her crucian carp soup. This soup is nutritious. It also tastes good. You don't need to add too much salt or seasoning. It is especially suitable for patients with uremia like Victoria, but the crucian carp are small, and they have a lot of bones. Nathaniel uses a level of care and patience that I have never seen before. He picks out the bones one by one. You don't need to be so careful. She has uremia. She's not a paraplegic. I said coldly. She's in this condition. How can you say such things? Do you have a conscience? Nathaniel wasn't embarrassed that I caught him. He kept his face expressionless. He asked me in return, where have you been these past few days? I answered him, I've been seeing other patients. Is that not allowed? She's not the only one in the world with kidney disease. I retorted directly. Nathaniel frowned and said angrily, I've asked the nurses. They say you haven't been to work at all these past few days. I can't take it anymore, he said directly. I just don't want to see people. Is that not allowed? I don't want to see you making out with her in the place where I work. And picking fish bones out for her. Is that not allowed either, Dr. Alexander? You've got it wrong. Nathaniel and I went to school together. He only looks after me because he feels sorry for me. There's really nothing between us. Victoria turns her head. She whispers to Nathaniel, Nathaniel, don't bother, just leave it. Don't blame Dr. Alexander. There's no suitable kidney source. Dr. Alexander can't help. It's all my fault. I got this incurable disease. Victoria tries to get up from the bed. Nathaniel quickly holds her down. Victoria, concentrate on your treatment. Don't worry about anything else. He turns to me, angrily. Dr. Alexander, are you human? Do you have to push her to the brink of despair? Can't you just donate a kidney and save her life? Nathaniel's eyes were red. He stared at me. We've been married for 5 years. I can't believe you're so heartless. How can you even call yourself a doctor? Ha ha, I laughed out of anger. How can there be such an outrageous thing in the world? A man who goes to such lengths to force his wife to donate her kidney to save her lover. Yet he has the nerve to accuse her of being heartless. I suddenly felt my blood boil. Without hesitation, I said, Nathaniel, don't say I didn't give you and your old classmate a chance. When I said I'd start with you for a match, I wasn't just saying it. Because your blood type is also O. I took out 2 organ donation intention forms and threw them directly in front of Nathaniel. You sign this letter of intent. I'll sign it. Nathaniel heard this and froze for a moment. Then he heard a crisp sound. He was obviously caught off guard. He looked down at the 2 agreements on the floor. His eyes were a little uneasy. What do you mean? Only 1 kidney is needed to save Victoria. Why do you need to sign 2 letters of intent? I sneered. Nathaniel, a kidney transplant is not that simple. Just having the same blood type is not enough. To increase the success rate, we also need to do a white blood cell antigen typing. The more the antigens match, the higher the success rate. In addition to the blood type and white blood cell antigen matching, there is another very important step. That is the cross-type check of the lymphocyte cytotoxicity test. This step is crucial. It directly affects whether the kidney transplant can be carried out smoothly. Normally, because of the body fluid exchange between husband and wife, most of the time the test results are negative. In other words, they are suitable for transplantation. I said with meaning. Nathaniel's eyes lit up. He bent down and gently wiped the corner of Victoria's mouth. Victoria, what do you want for dinner? I'll make you some chicken soup. How's that? Victoria was unmoved. Her eyes were shining, and she held Nathaniel's hand tightly. Nathaniel, will you donate your kidney to me? Nathaniel quietly pulled his hand back, his eyes avoiding mine. Of course I want to help you, but a man's kidney is a very important organ. I've heard that it can affect one's ability in that area, so I need to discuss it with my wife first. Right, Dr. Alexander, he looked at me. Rumor has it, I answered immediately, even if it does affect you. I agree. After that, I added firmly. Nathaniel froze for a moment, yelling in a low voice. Dr. Alexander, are you crazy? It doesn't matter if I'm crazy or not. You don't want to refuse to donate, do you? I looked at Nathaniel triumphantly. She's your old schoolmate. She's the light of your heart, and she's still so young. Do you want to just stand there and watch her die? Human life is so important. You're not even willing to donate a kidney. How can you call yourself a human being? Do you even have a basic conscience? Nathaniel's face suddenly turned red. He gasped for air. He looked at Victoria, then at me. Okay, I'll sign it. He clenched his teeth, glared at me angrily. I'll bet you, to see whose kidney is more suitable for transplanting into Victoria. I picked up the 2 letters of intent on the floor, signed my name on one of them, then handed it to Nathaniel. Nathaniel snatched my pen. Just as he was about to write, he hesitated and asked, "You won't cheat, will you?" "No. If I cheat, you know what will happen." Nathaniel left a cold threat. He picked up the 2 letters of intent and strode out of the ward. A soft sigh sounded in the room. Dr. Alexander, you protect him so desperately. Does he know? The soft expression on Victoria's face completely disappeared, replaced by a cold smile. She asked, "For such a man, you would rather fall out with a good friend of many years. Is it worth it? So you do remember that we were good friends for many years." I looked at Victoria. My heart was filled with mixed emotions. Of course I remember. How could I forget? Victoria said to me with a smile, "Don't forget. Back then, at the most critical moment, but you stabbed me in the back." Dr. Alexander, she wore a smile on her face, but the coldness in her eyes made my heart grow cold. I shook my head gently and sighed. Nathaniel had been lying from the beginning. Victoria was not his old schoolmate at all. She was mine, ever since school. Victoria and I have been very close. We have been good friends since junior high school, from junior high school to high school, and then to university. We were together almost every day, until the 2nd semester of our senior year. We started our internships. Victoria and I were assigned to the nephrology department. Our mentor was a nationally renowned nephrology expert. He was already in his 70s. He had long since retired. His contract with the hospital was about to expire. He would soon have to say goodbye to the medical profession he had dedicated his life to. He was willing to take on the 2 interns. He wanted to make the most of his remaining time. Towards the end of the internship, my mentor said he had a recommendation for us. He could directly send us to the nephrology department of the 3rd City Hospital. We would also get a permanent position there. The 3rd City Hospital is where I work now. It is a top-tier hospital. The starting point is very high. Not to mention the permanent position. Victoria and I both wanted the place. Victoria was smarter than me. Her grades were better than mine. She knew how to please her mentor. She made her mentor smile every day. She was convinced that her mentor would choose her. However, my mentor chose me. Victoria left without saying goodbye. When I saw her again, she was leaning on Nathaniel. She looked weak and feeble. Her face was pale. It's like stabbing someone in the back. Who stabbed who in the back? Exactly. But I didn't want to argue with Victoria. Victoria was a very determined person. Once she made up her mind about something, no one could change her mind. It seems you really want Nathaniel's kidney, I said coldly. Either you donate it or he does, you decide. Victoria said bluntly, aren't you afraid that I will tell Nathaniel the truth? You've been getting close to him. In fact, you've been getting close to him to get back at me and to take his kidney while you're at it. The anger in me was getting harder and harder to suppress. Victoria was acting like she had a right to be angry, as if she deserved this. But Victoria, no one owes you anything. Victoria didn't care about my anger or my threats. She said with contempt, you can try. He'll believe you or me. I was about to say something, but then the door suddenly opened. Nathaniel walked in. Victoria jumped up from the bed. Her hair was a mess. She threw herself into Nathaniel's arms. Crying, she said, Nathaniel, I don't want to be cured. I want to go home and die now. I don't want to be a burden to the doctors here. Nathaniel's hair stood on end. He gritted his teeth and squeezed out each word with difficulty. Dr. Alexander, get out. As I watched Nathaniel's distorted face and Victoria's triumphant expression, I couldn't say a word. I could only give a bitter smile. Haha, it's useless to say anything more. I turned around and walked out of the ward. I walked to the door. Suddenly, I turned around. I gave Nathaniel a cold look. I forgot to tell you something. The reason I asked you to sign that letter of intent is because I have already obtained your matching report. Your blood type is the same as Victoria's. The tissue typing is also the same. The cross-type test did not show any rejection. There are even 4 matching targets for the leukocyte antigen. As long as there are more than 2 matching targets, the transplant can proceed. 4 matching targets. That tells you something. I smiled at Nathaniel. I said coldly, Nathaniel, your kidney. Sooner or later it will be hers. I took a month's leave. I really didn't want to stay in the hospital, facing other people's gossip. Besides, I'm not the only doctor in the nephrology department. Victoria's dialysis treatment doesn't require my personal presence at all. But during this month, Nathaniel has almost exhausted my phone battery. In front of the hospital dormitory, I meet Nathaniel again. This time, he comes looking for me. Unlike before, he is no longer arrogant, nor is he as aggressive as before. He is standing in the cold wind. He looks haggard. When he sees me coming out, he quickly walks over and forced a smile. Dr. Alexander, let's have a chat. I watched him with a frown. What do you want to talk about? Don't be angry. I have the feeling that there might be some misunderstanding between us. What misunderstanding? These past few days, I've thought carefully about my behavior, and I've realized that I've behaved inappropriately in some ways. Nathaniel's attitude was sincere. I responded indifferently, HM. And this behavior has indeed caused you harm and distress, and have led to some unfavorable comments about you. I apologize, but I interrupted him directly. Nathaniel's face flashed with displeasure, but he quickly regained his composure. He said seriously, you also understand. I am a very emotional person. I have always considered this a strength, but now I realize it may also make me lack a sense of boundaries. Like Victoria, she lost her parents when she was young at school. We all sympathized with her. We looked after her like a younger sister. After graduation, we had lost touch, but then she suddenly approached me the other day. She told me she had kidney failure. I was very sad to hear this. I couldn't help but want to help her, so I promised to do everything I could to save her. You know me. I'm straightforward. When I'm nice to someone, I'm completely devoted. As a result, Victoria became dependent on me, and I treated her like a real sister. He said with a heavy expression, I understand. It's all my fault. You can scold me, hit me, even stab me with a knife. It's fine, as long as it makes you feel better. Wait, I really can't hold back anymore. I interrupted Nathaniel's performance. If I let him continue, I'm afraid I'll burst out laughing. Yes, I don't feel aggrieved. I just find it very funny. At the same time, I also feel a little emotional. Nathaniel does have some talent. He has a good face and a good way with words. He's moody, but he explained that it's because he doesn't want to put on an act for me. He said he betrayed me because he's too kind. He's overflowing with compassion. He can say the most simple and sincere romantic things with that mouth of his, and with that sincere expression on his face. It completely moved me. That's why even though I knew he had a bad temper, I still married him without a second thought. He said I'm a sentimental person. I was immediately impressed, but then I realized, this is actually a common line used by scumbags. I asked him in return, you treat Victoria like your own sister. Yes, I understand that this is inappropriate. Would you have sex with your own sister and, without taking any precautions? I sneered sarcastically. Nathaniel was embarrassed and angry. His face suddenly turned red. Dr. Alexander, don't jump to conclusions. Nothing like that happened. I have a photo of you and Victoria in bed on my phone. I step closer. He complains, I'm a straightforward person. I offend people easily. Someone must have set me up. I ask him, are you sure? I look at him doubtfully. He says immediately, really? I swear, if I'd done something to hurt you, I'm not a human being. My family isn't human either. Nathaniel's eyes gleam with triumph. He continued, as for Victoria's baby, I can only advise her to get an abortion. I looked sad. Nathaniel, however, froze in his tracks. His expression was incredibly complex. There was shame, anger, confusion, and a hint of surprise. What did you say? I pressed. Nathaniel's vow had been quite moving. I wanted him to repeat it. Unfortunately, Nathaniel didn't give me the chance to enjoy it. He simply stepped forward and stared straight at me. Victoria is pregnant. I caught a bad smell. It came from the less than respectable people. Yes, is this yours? I took a big step back. Before I could ask, of course not. Nathaniel immediately shook his head. I said calmly, so I suggest Victoria have an abortion. Nathaniel came back to his senses. His face suddenly turned red. Why should I have an abortion? Because Victoria is now in the final stages of uremia. She needs dialysis 3 times a week to stay alive. Pregnancy will greatly increase the burden on the kidneys. It can lead to a variety of complications. It may endanger the life of the pregnant woman in a short period of time. I looked into Nathaniel's eyes and said, all uremia patients, doctors will advise them to terminate the pregnancy. I then asked, how long has she been pregnant? 5 months. She should have gotten pregnant before being hospitalized. At that time, Nathaniel said he was going to San Francisco for fun. As a result, I found 2 shadows close together in the scenic photos he sent me. I secretly wondered to myself, how could you not see it? Because she has uremia. The fetus develops more slowly, and she also has ascites. Why didn't you say so before? I laughed and replied, this is the patient's privacy. Why should I tell you? Who are you to her? Nathaniel was at a loss for words. Suddenly, he knelt down. Nathaniel knelt heavily on the concrete floor. He looked up pleadingly. Dr. Alexander, I beg you, save Victoria, save the baby in her. Whatever you want me to do to make it up to you, I promise. Save her, save the baby. It was a moment when I should have been happy, but I couldn't be happy. All I could feel was a sigh. This was the second time Nathaniel had knelt before me. The first time was when he proposed to me. Nathaniel had always wanted a child. I know this, but I never wanted to get pregnant. This is probably one of the reasons why we grew apart. But Nathaniel, do you remember the oath you took the last time you knelt? If there is no love left, then just go, don't lie, and don't betray. There is another sentence, which I have always found particularly true. Some people are incorrigible. No matter how much you give, they will never change for the better. You think if you have a child with that irresponsible man, he'll change his ways. Don't be stupid. In the end, you'll only be trapping yourself. Watching Nathaniel kneel before me, I felt a little sorry for him. Until now, Nathaniel still thinks he's Victoria's savior, her hope. He thinks Victoria loves and relies on him deeply, but he doesn't know. In Victoria's eyes, he's just a tool she uses to get back at me. He can even provide her with a kidney. Perfect. And I have tried to prevent this because I still feel something for my ex-wife. Forget it. I'll try one last time. Nathaniel, this is the last time I'll help you. Whether you save her life or not is up to you. In order to save the baby, we can only risk a kidney transplant during Victoria's pregnancy. But the anti-rejection drugs, used after the operation, can have a serious effect on the fetus. It could lead to fetal death or congenital developmental defects. The only hope is to find a kidney donor with a very high degree of compatibility. For example, a 4-point match. This will minimize the need for anti-rejection drugs. I looked Nathaniel in the eye and said, Nathaniel, either you donate your kidney to save the baby, or you lose the baby to save your kidney. You choose. Nathaniel lay on the operating table. He had made his choice. I had already guessed. The hospital was conducting an unprecedented kidney transplant. The patient is a pregnant woman. The hospital is therefore taking extra care. Everything is being done to the highest standards. I look through the glass at Nathaniel. He has been shaved all over. He looks a little cute. The nurse has already inserted the needle with the induction drug. The anesthetist is watching him carefully. I suddenly say to the anesthetist, "Reduce the dose of anesthetic later. His antithrombin activity is low. An overdose could cause cardiac arrest." The anesthesiologist gave me a surprised look. "Okay," he nodded reluctantly. I knew why the anesthesiologist was surprised. According to the hierarchy, the anesthesiologist outranked the surgeon. I couldn't order him around. Besides, I wasn't Nathaniel's surgeon. Living donor kidney transplants require simultaneous operations on the donor and recipient. Removing the kidney is the easiest part. Any surgeon can do it. What really matters is the transplant. This is performed by me, a nephrologist. I watch as the surgeon I called in to assist begins the operation. I return to my own operating table. The two operations take place in the same operating room. They are separated only by a pane of glass. Even the anesthetist is the same. Victoria is pregnant. She cannot have general anesthetic. She can only have local anesthetic. So she is awake throughout the operation. She sees me take up the scalpel. She smiles gently and said, "Dr. Alexander, thank you. I understand that you are not very happy with me, but don't worry. Even if something goes wrong during the operation, I won't blame you." All the medical staff, including the anesthetist, looked at me, but I didn't care anymore, after all. I had already been the subject of conversation in the hospital for a long time. I also understood why Victoria said those words at this time. She was obviously worried that I would retaliate, so she wanted to stop me publicly first. I had to succeed with this operation. There could be no mistakes, not even the slightest error. It could end my career. It could even land me in jail. "Stop it," I said calmly, and I made the decisive cut. The operation went very well. It was a model case in my career. The nurses wheeled the two of them into the intensive care unit. I stayed there to keep watch. The first few hours after a kidney transplant are particularly important. If there is an acute rejection, the kidney will have to be removed immediately. However, this is very rare. Victoria and Nathaniel are both doing well. Their vital signs are stable. All indicators are ideal. Victoria's new kidney is already supplying blood normally. No anticoagulants are even needed. This kidney transplant has gone very smoothly. It's as if it was always part of Victoria. It just happened to grow in Nathaniel's body by mistake. Victoria has remained awake, watching the nurses leave. She suddenly says, "I never thought you would really go all out to help me with the surgery. Dr. Alexander, you regret it. What's there to regret?" I said coldly. Victoria can't see my expression and looks a little disappointed. Victoria asks seriously, "You knew I was born with renal tubular acidosis. Kidney failure was only a matter of time, but you still took away the nephrologist's chance and ended my last hope. Have you ever regretted it?" I respond with a cold smile. Victoria wanted to become a nephrologist because nephrologists have a certain degree of control over the allocation of kidneys. She says firmly, "I have never regretted this choice." I smile coldly answered. Mentor had actually predicted back then that you would definitely need a kidney transplant to save your life in the future. Because of this, he chose me instead of you. Why? Mentor said, "To be a doctor, you must be pure and have medical ethics. You cannot use your medical skills for personal gain. Doctors must put their patients first and regard it as their responsibility to cure their patients." Victoria sneered and said, "Medical ethics, putting patients first. Dr. Alexander, can you really put your patients first? If Nathaniel doesn't donate a kidney, would you be willing to give me yours?" "I would," I responded immediately. "Dr. Alexander, you've become so unscrupulous." Victoria was still laughing. I shook my head. I didn't argue with her anymore. "You should be nicer to Nathaniel in the future. He genuinely likes you." I said this with a bit of mixed feelings. Victoria, however, widened her eyes. "Dr. Alexander, what were you thinking? What a terrible man. You don't even want him. How could I want him? He donated a kidney for you. Aren't you even grateful?" Victoria had just had surgery. Although she tried to remain calm, I could still feel her heart laughing inside. "Grateful? What's there to be grateful for? This kind of man? Only you treat him like a treasure. You know he cheated on you, and you're still defending him." Victoria finally couldn't hold back. She let out a laugh. She said, "But you're still pregnant with his child. Dr. Alexander, you don't really think this is my child with him, do you?" A strange smile appeared on her face. She continued, "Just him. Is he a suitable match for me to have a child with? Even if he is a suitable match, Can he and I have a successful pregnancy? Don't forget, the more matching factors there are, the more difficult it is to conceive. This child is just a tool for you to get your revenge. Right. I took a deep breath. Victoria was right. Her HLA match with Nathaniel was too high. The probability of them successfully having a child was very low. This had been confirmed in many cases of kidney transplants between couples, of course. Otherwise, why would I have insisted on getting pregnant before the operation? Only if you or Nathaniel were willing to donate a kidney to me did I have any hope. Victoria was emotional. She stared at me intently. Her tone was firm. You owe me this, Dr. Alexander. I looked at Victoria with a complex expression. So, you don't actually care about the effect the operation or the drugs will have on the baby. It's just a prop. Why should I care? I sighed and shook my head. Victoria, you'll get the results you deserve sooner or later. I'm waiting, Victoria replied. After spending 2 days in the ICU, she was transferred to the central hospital. She left Nathaniel, who had just donated a kidney to her, without hesitation. I took a long leave of absence. I rented a place to live on my own. The kidney transplant operation on Victoria attracted a lot of attention in the industry. It was the first successful kidney transplant operation on a patient during pregnancy in the country. Some hospitals invited me to share my experience. Some even offered me a job. Nathaniel was still being treated in our hospital. I didn't want to see him every day, and I didn't want to get involved in the matter between him and Victoria. Our relationship is over. All that's left is to sign the divorce papers, but things are not that simple. One night 2 months later, I suddenly get a call from a colleague. Dr. Alexander, are you in the area? Yes. What's up? Great. A patient wants to see you. Come to the hospital as soon as possible. I rush to the hospital. I put on a sterile gown and go into the emergency room. I find Victoria lying on the emergency bed. There was blood everywhere. What happened? I asked the emergency doctor next to me. The victim had been stabbed 7 times in the chest and abdomen. Multiple internal organs had been severely damaged. This had led to organ failure. I froze for a moment. I asked, what about her child? The emergency doctor knew Victoria's situation very well. He waved his hand and said, the child is fine. In order to reduce the impact on the fetus, and for Victoria's recovery, Central Hospital induced labor at 37 weeks. The baby is now in the neonatal unit at the Central Hospital. I heard it's quite healthy. I'm relieved. I point at Victoria. How is she now? There's no hope. It's multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. The emergency doctor shrugs. He gives me a deep look, as she requested. We've given her a heart stimulant. You have 5 minutes at most. The emergency doctor leaves. I walk over to Victoria with mixed feelings. You're here. Victoria looked haggard. Her voice was weak. You're dying. I sighed. I know, it's called multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. I heard you. Victoria was silent. I didn't say anything either. I felt a mixture of emotions, some relief. To put it simply, multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. It means that multiple organs have failed together. Even immortals can't save someone in this situation. Don't be fooled by the fact that she can still speak. She's actually being kept alive by drugs like adrenaline. Victoria suddenly asked, how did you convince Nathaniel to kill me? I frowned. It was Nathaniel who hurt you. You're in this situation. Why pretend on the day of the operation? You asked the anesthetist to use less anesthetic. You just wanted Nathaniel to wake up earlier. Didn't you? Victoria sneered. You're wrong. I did deliberately let Nathaniel wake up earlier, but not to make him trouble you. I wanted him to protect the child. Victoria's face suddenly turned pale. She asked with short breath, you knew it long ago. Yes, I nodded. Victoria's gaze gradually became blank. Dr. Alexander, you are so ruthless. Are you qualified to be a doctor? Her ECG suddenly became a straight line. I went to see Nathaniel for the last time. He was sentenced to death for intentional homicide, causing the death of another person. And in a very sensitive place like a hospital, in front of many doctors and patients, the impact was particularly bad. He was eventually sentenced to death. Before the execution, he asked to see me, so I went to the detention center. That's where the lethal injection is carried out. After the operation, we hadn't seen each other for almost 2 years. Seeing him again felt like it had been a long time. I was holding a baby girl. That was Victoria's child. The child is 1 year and 5 months old. She is very cute, although a bit small, but she is healthy and very smart. She can already babble. Nathaniel is shackled hand and foot. He stares at the baby girl. His face is full of disgust. "What is she doing here?" he asks me. "I bring her to see her father." I answer seriously. "Dr. Alexander, are you here to make fun of me?" Nathaniel's eyes gradually turn red. This is his way of showing anger. "No, she is your daughter. Your biological daughter." Nathaniel is stunned. He looks at me with confusion. "What do you mean? Didn't you say Victoria and I couldn't have children?" "You and Victoria really can't have children, but I can," I calmly explain. Nathaniel is obviously a little confused. "That's right. When you took Victoria to San Francisco for treatment, she secretly underwent IVF. She used my eggs, but I didn't donate sperm. She graduated from medical school. You were with her so many times. Was it really that difficult to collect some samples?" I looked at Nathaniel with a sarcastic expression, and he was obviously a little overwhelmed. "Why did she do this? Because your kidneys will only last for 10 years at most. She plans to use this child as a backup kidney source. You are type O blood. So am I, so the baby must be O positive. You match 4 targets. I match 2. The chances are good that the baby will match her." Nathaniel's expression suddenly became fierce. He took a quick step forward. His shackles made a harsh sound. "Are you sure you're not lying to me?" "I swear. I'm telling the truth." I sighed. Nathaniel's sudden action made the police officers react immediately and quickly pinned him to the ground. Nathaniel didn't seem to feel a thing. He kept trying to lift his head. He was staring at the baby girl I was holding. "Remember, her name is Alexander. She takes my last name." I gave Nathaniel one last look, then I turned and left. Victoria and I were actually in a similar situation. Victoria's family had a hereditary condition called renal tubular acidosis. I was born with a pituitary gland problem. I couldn't get pregnant because we both had congenital health problems. Victoria and I were very close, so close that she was willing to help me get pregnant, and I promised to donate a kidney to her for this plan. She accompanied me to San Francisco to freeze my eggs, and I accompanied her to an internship in nephrology. Victoria was stubborn and suspicious. She didn't believe for a second that I would donate a kidney to her. She wanted to control her own destiny. She fought hard for a position as a nephrologist, but my mentor chose me in the end. Our long-time friendship suddenly collapsed. She reappeared a few years later. She had forgotten her promise. She only remembered my betrayal. She had previously retaliated against me in the most vicious way. She used Nathaniel to force me to donate my kidney. She also forced me to transplant her daughter's kidney to her. It wasn't until I died at the hands of an angry Nathaniel that I understood some of the truth. After I was reborn, the first thing I did was to confirm something. Victoria was undergoing her first dialysis in the hospital where I was. I had already flown to San Francisco. I had retrieved the frozen eggs in my name. After testing, it was discovered that these eggs did not match me because there was no DNA sample from Victoria. There was no way to compare. The only thing that could be determined was that her blood type was also O. When Victoria was 4 months pregnant, I took the opportunity to confirm the kidney match and had an amniocentesis. The fetal exfoliated cells were extracted and sent it to a specialist institute for paternity testing. The results confirmed it. The child is indeed mine. In a previous life, I actually removed my daughter's kidney with my own hands. "Dr. Alexander, you must raise Alexander well. That way we'll be even." As I was about to walk to the entrance of the detention center, I suddenly heard Nathaniel shouting behind me. I paused slightly. "Yes, Victoria, Nathaniel. Let's just forget about what happened between us, Mum. Don't cry." Alexander's little hand gently touched my face. It made me feel warm. Mommy's not crying." I gently pressed my face against Alexander's. I could feel her skin was soft and smooth. It felt really good. Victoria was right before she died. I really wasn't qualified to be a doctor anymore, but I could be a good mother.